Welcome back. This is Minuteman File number 5, America's Most Wanted. Maniac on the loose. What you're about to hear is real, not fabricated, it's not exaggerated. It actually happened. It happened to me during my lifetime. And this is my story. (1980s). The desert of California. I'm approximately 21 years old. Brand new, right out of U.S. Army basic training for a National Guard of California. Weapons specialist, hand-to-hand combat, martial arts. I could do it all. And I got a medal in the military to prove it. But what I'm about to tell you has haunted me for over 30 years. Day in, day out. And it forced me out of this valley. Scared, running, nowhere to turn. Because I stood face to face with a murderer who made it to America's Most Wanted. And it happened in Banning, California, in the mid-80s. A murderer. He was one Charles Meir Sears, the way I understand it. He escaped from some sort of mental institution, prison, out of Northern California, killed a guard, stole his gun, escaped from the facility, stole their van, and picked up a 15-year-old hitchhiker along the way, unsuspecting of who he was. Somehow he managed to restrain and lock her in the car somehow. I can't explain how. But what I can tell you is I was the first one to respond to this guy. I don't care what anybody says. I was there. I can give you exact details right down to the second. And I was ignored. And that just fucking pisses me off. I walked out of a Kmart directly across the street from a Chevron at the time. As I walked towards my vehicle, I was approximately 50 to 100 yards away from this gas station at the time when I heard what I thought was yelling. I turned and looked and saw a woman in a white van, the kind the counties use, the kind the prisons use, screaming and beating on the windows of this van to get out. People all around looking and wondering what's going on. I'm getting closer and closer and closer when I see this man in a red beanie, baseball beanie cap, whatever you want to call it, come flying out the door of the concessions towards the van. He turned. He looked towards me and he turned towards the van and looked towards her, pointed his gun directly at her, which looked like a police revolver of some sort. To me it looked as if it was a snub nose, similar to the one detectives used for years. This maniac emptied the gun through the windshield at point blank range, less than 5 to 10 feet away. When he saw that I was coming and the other people were scared and screaming and running, this man ran, and as he ran he lost his hat. I believe it was due to the wind. It blew off his head in the gas station. He hopped in the van and he proceeded southwest towards the freeway. He did not hop on the freeway. He went under, and he went down across the railroad tracks, down a dirt road, and he went for about 2 miles down this dirt road and somehow managed to get rid of the body while he was doing it in a matter of less than 5 minutes or less. I ran back to my car and chased this man, unarmed, unprepared, not calling police. I chased this man down that dirt road in an old beat-up 66 Ford Falcon. As I passed this maniac, on the way, he was coming the opposite direction, in a little blue Chevy Geo, if I remember right. And he had his gun pointed right at me, and he looked right at me, and I looked right at him, and it was surreal, very real. And I had a hard choice to make. Do I stop this maniac in his tracks by slamming on my brakes and crashing into him? Or do I find the girl? Do I let this maniac drive off with another victim and kill him the same way? Or do I go after the girl? My first reaction was to save the fallen victim. Why? Because that's what the Army taught me. You never leave anybody behind. Ever. Even if it means leaving your friends to save somebody else. That's what real Americans are supposed to do. At least that's the way it was pounded into my head by our own military. You save the fallen first. If you can. So that 2 seconds of surreal as this maniac was passing me and we're staring each other down was the hardest choice I've ever had to make in my life. Do I save the new victim or save the old one? My choice was simple. I kept driving in hopes that I could do anything to help this girl that I saw shots just only a few yards away from me. I continued on down that dirt road till it came to an end, where I found the van pointing north, still running with its lights on, both doors wide open. I get out, I search the vehicle, there's no girl. The only thing I saw was just unbelievable amount of blood everywhere. Something I don't think I ever want to see again. And I stood there in awe for about 4-5 minutes, waiting for the police to show up so I could tell them what I saw, what I did, how the guy got away, what he did. The police show up. The only thing they said to me is, "What are you doing here? Get out of here. We don't need your testimony." I showed him my National Guard ID. I showed him my California driver's license. I tried to explain to this moron what happened and how I was involved, only to be told to basically go to hell, get off our crime scene. I never even got a stinking thank you. Nothing. Not even a F you. All I got was, "You're not needed." I just chased down a maniac with a gun. And this moron, cop, didn't even care. And it's haunted me for 30 years. I've called the police department to tell them about it. I even tried calling the sheriffs once to tell them about it. I called the FBI many years ago about it and got some bozo that never even heard of the case. They most likely thought I was some kind of crackpot, only to be discredited by a second FBI agent 30-some odd years later when I tried to explain it to them again. So now I'm explaining it to you, the American people. and Mr. John Walsh, so he will know. But there are people out there that do chase your maniacs, Mr. Walsh, whether you choose to believe it or not. I've been confronted by many of them. Why? I can't explain it. The one thing I can tell you is all the ones I met, you found in the Northwest, right where I lived in my own backyard. I know of 3 in Anacortes, Washington alone. 1 in Banning, California. I know another one that I'm actually I really don't want to tell you about. But all I can say is he worked for Kenworth. I work basically across the street. I met this maniac once. And that'll be in one of my other files. Anyway. Years later, I'm in Anacortes, Washington. Turn on the TV to America's Most Wanted. This is many years later. I don't know exactly how many or when. I'm not even going to try to remember. You can look it up. They profiled this guy on America's Most Wanted. The very same guy eyewitness shoot this girl. The very same guy that took a hostage and ran. The very same situation that I was ignored for what I did to try and help this girl, now was haunting me again years later on TV, as he was just aired on America's Most Wanted. Fortunately, from what I understand, he was captured right away. It took me from 1989, when I went to Washington, to 2010, to go back to that spot where it all happened. Simply to do one thing. That was a thing that I was taught as a part-time missionary for a 12-year period. Basically, I said the Lord's Prayer over the exact spot that young girl died, and I was unable to help her. And I hated myself for over 20 years for not being able to help that girl. It destroyed me inside, knowing that this girl died right in front of me. And there wasn't nothing I could do about it. And I was right out of boot camp, highly motivated, ready to kill myself. And all you guys out there that's ever been through basic training, you know the first thing you want to do is save the world when you get out of boot camp. And you got that mindset that nobody can kick your ass. You'll chase anybody down. You don't care if they got 12 guns in their back pocket. You're a trained killer by the U.S. government, and they can't hurt you. That's why I did what I did. I didn't think about what I was doing that day. It was instinct that led me to follow that girl that day. I witnessed gunfire, and my first reaction was to catch the guy. I didn't think about it. It didn't come as a plot or plan or a scheme of any kind in my head. I just reacted without thinking. And I risked my life only to be shut off, ignored, and discredited 30 years later. That's what our government has done for me on this subject. And